financially as well, you probably could have got something like a Rolex Submariner or something if you'd really wanted to in 2002.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that instead of, going down the route where we look back today in hindsight and gone, that would have been great, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You went with something that was sort of revolutionary at the time with the EcoDrive technology. Yeah. Today we're going to be sitting down with a collector who's been collecting roughly 7 years and accumulated over 40 watches within that time. About 2 years ago, he decided to trade in around 30 of his watches and attain his dream watch. This person is Nigel Kibble, he's my father, and I think you're going to find his collection story interesting. Let's take a closer look. So, thank you very much for coming on Collector's Corner. Not that I gave you much choice anyway, I sort of dragged you down here with all your watches and said you've got to sit down and look at the camera and good luck to it, really. So we're going to talk about your collection, how you got started, and the watch, as I alluded to in the intro, that there's no hints on the table about at all, or on his wrist. But a watch that you've wanted for a very long time and you decided to trade pretty much everything and start afresh almost. So let's take it right back to your first watch. How did this come about and what watch was it?
Well, I think the first one was really the Citizen, the titanium. I think I wore this every day from 2002 to 2005.
Really? It was that long? I thought it was around 2007, no?
No, it was
longer.
Yeah.
So I remember, I don't ever remember you being like a watch person or anything like that. It definitely wasn't the case. But I always remember this watch. And is this when we were in Canada?
Yeah, we went to Canada. I saw this and I was drawn to it just from the complications that were on it. I wanted something that was rugged, that I could wear every day and not worry about. And also with EcoDrive, you don't have to worry about a battery.
No.
Fascinating thing is that the battery is still the same one.
From 2002?
Yeah.
That's 20 years without a cell change. So for those of you who don't know with the EcoDrives, it's a cell basically rather than a battery as per se. And the cells require changing every now and again. But I think when you got this in 2002, that would have been early of EcoDrive in general. So they were probably still not sure of the longevity of the movement themselves.
Well, they guaranteed them for, I think it was 10 years.
Oh wow, okay.
And most, from what I've read, is most lasted about 5 years.
Oh wow!
So
you just got
I've lost, I think, one bar.
One bar of the back. Oh yeah,
but it charges up to that level and stays there for months.
So you've never had anything done to this watch, any work, nothing.
Nothing.
And what's interesting is 2002. You say you got this, and obviously integrated bracelet design. I mean, you're sort of predating the trends here. That's kind of interesting. Obviously, integrated bracelets have come back massively.
Yeah.
This we've got a trendsetter here with this watch. There you go. So I remember this watch. I remember it very, very closely. And were you aware of watches in 2002 when you got this? Did you know of any other brands, or were you just sort of buying a watch?
No, I'd never really had that much interest. I mean, obviously there was lots of watches around, and obviously in the industry I was working in, wearing a watch, I could only wear it when I was travelling, when I was actually in the garages. Obviously you couldn't wear a watch, so I needed something that obviously was accurate and reliable, which that ticked all the boxes. And being titanium, you feel like you've got nothing on your wrist.
No, and I think it's fair to say as well at the time, financially as well, you probably could have got something like a Rolex Submariner or something if you'd really wanted to in 2002.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that instead of going down the route where we look back today in hindsight and gone, that would have been great, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You went with something that was sort of revolutionary at the time with the EcoDrive technology, titanium, incredibly robust, all of the things that today we know that are great, but at the time was a bit of a risk. It's almost like the stories of those people who go in to buy a Rolex and they went with an Oyster Quartz rather than like an amazing Daytona because it was the latest technology, right? So I think that's quite interesting that that's what happened. So from 2002, you had this watch.
Yeah.
When did the collecting start? When did you start getting into watches?
Well, that would have been probably about 7 years ago, I think, with the Seikos, with you doing eBay.
Yeah, so that would have been 2017. So this would have been when I started this YouTube channel originally, and also I started buying and selling watches on the side. And obviously you had your Citizen, so you already had a watch. But I think my my constant going on about it, which is probably what happened. You started going, let me at least look into what he's going on about.
Yeah.
And then you got drawn in. I think you
I did.
really sort of found that bug, and I think it's safe to say from 2017 you accumulated.
I did.
You went down the collecting route, and not very expensive watches. Probably your most expensive was £300-400. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
But you collected 30 of these watches. Some as low as you paid £10 on eBay, and some as high as £200. And you really had that broad scope. Are there any of the watches here today that were from that period?
The Orient, the Avia.
Yep.
They're the earliest ones.
Let's start with the Orient. So, interesting choice. After a Citizen Titanium Eco Drive, you went over to an automatic Orient Mako Gen 1, I believe, with the...
Yes, because it's got the date. Yeah, the push date.
So what made you go for this?
The blue. One of the best blues I've come across, even today.
Yeah.
It's so with that sunburst dial, and also the movement itself in-house.
Yep.
I liked all that side of it. Orient have always drawn me with their innovation and being a dive watch. Again, it's
robust utility.
Yeah,
I think there was a theme there in the early days, and as you say with the blue as well. I think at the price point, this is definitely one of the best watches in this price range, other than certain Seikos maybe.
Yeah.
What did you pay for this? I believe you got some stupid deal of about 1 million straps, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think I got. I think it was 8 straps, and I think it was £65 at the time, which I thought, I'm definitely going to go for that. I think at the time they were going for about 120.
Okay,
I think.
So pretty similar to today. Then there
wasn't much difference. Yeah,
but you managed to find one pre-owned with all those strap options.
Yeah,
I mean it's amazing because you did have some other Seikos as well. You had a Turtle. You've had
the Monster.
The Monster, yes. You've had definitely a range, and if you look back early enough in some of our videos, you'll see some of these watches, and my dad actually featured in some of the old videos. Especially the one with the Monster. I actually believe I did a review saying I really disliked the Monster.
You did? Yeah.
And now I absolutely love the Monster. So my taste has sort of grown with the watch for sure. But let's move over. So you had the Citizen, you still have the Orient, but then we've got something very different over here with this little Avia. What drew you to this?
Basically the dial. I love the Roman numerals, the sub-dial, I love the balance of it. It's just everything that a vintage watch stands for me.
Yeah, it's nice. Screw back. You've got a sector dial with sub-seconds. It's an attractive looking watch. I can see why it drew you in. Wouldn't be my choice of bracelet.
No, of course. But... I mean, I kept it on there. I mean, that's how it came.
That's how it came to you, yeah.
And I mean,
fantastic.
People, don't particularly like those kind of straps, but they are incredibly comfy.
They are comfortable. There is no.
They don't catch on hairs or anything that I've found.
And would this have been one of your first vintage watches?
Yes, I think I
suspect another eBay find.
Again, it was eBay. I had a Dom watch. I think it was a 32mm.
Right.
And I wanted something a little bit bigger that I could wear, and that sort of fitted the bill. That
drew you in. So with vintage, I can see you still have quite a few vintage on the table. I'd say most of your watches, other than a few, are vintage.
Yeah.
Citizen became a big thing, and I think early days with the first watches I ever bought and sold were Citizen Eagle 7s.
Yeah.
And I know you had a few of those over the years as well, and some of which were part of the 30 that we sold, some of which I actually bought and I still own myself from you because I thought they were cool. Yeah. But we have this little guy. Let's talk about this one. So what's going on here? Citizen 7-star Deluxe 7.
Yeah. So again, this was an early Eagle 7. It got the same criteria as the 7 range. This is an early iteration of it. And again, it was the dial with that
in a ring. Yeah, it's almost like an inner fluted bezel.
Yeah,
very cool.
And obviously the 7, and again, it was the balance of it and the applied indices. It was all of that sort of shouts to me, and also the case.
Yeah, the shape, very interesting. It's the first time I properly looked at it like this. Yeah,
with the sort of bevel edges. Yeah. Again, it's a lot of attention to detail, which Citizen did back then. Yeah,
and I think it's interesting to see you started with a Citizen, and here you've gone all the way back to a vintage Citizen.
Yeah.
In the collection, so it's nice to see this evolution as it's gone. Yeah. And I think it's fair to say, by the sounds of it, design and aesthetics is a big part of your collection. you know, mechanically, sure, you know about the mechanics of these watches you own, but
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like that's the buying decision.
No, I think it's more of form and function. Seems to be something that draws me, and also the layout of the dial, the components of it, the way that designers have looked in, and it sort of reflects the time of period that we're talking about. Like you've got there the Bolivar, which has got the organic style bracelet.
Very cool.
Which again, I wanted an Accutron. I've never had one. It's an early one, I believe.
Yeah, and again, as you were just saying about design and case, it's very much of its time. You know,
Yeah.
you look at that; they're never going to make anything quite like this again.
No.
And it's all one piece, which is amazing. You look at it and you think that's going to be a few pieces all forged together.
That's right. Yeah, it looks like
that is a piece of work, that's for sure.
Again, it's that history side of it which appeals
brings
to
you
me.
in. And I think that's an interesting segue to the big pile of watches we have over here, which if you guys and girls would like to know more about these in general, let us know and we can do a dedicated video because he has more than what you see here and a whole history. But give us a brief rundown of what these are and why you have them.
So these are citizens. I've got those citizens on the brain.
Yeah, this is it.
These are services. Services is a local company that was around from 1925 up to around the 1970s when they stopped production, and the company finally finished completely in 2002. So it's got a massive history. Frank Licorice, which is a
Great name.
great name, set up the company. I just love the variety that the watches bring, very much in the same vein as Ingersoll, Smiths, Timex.
Yeah.
It goes through a whole span of period and also movements as well, because they were a company that assembled watches rather than designing.
So what that means is they bought components
Yes.
from different places, bought them in-house and built them, put them together and then distributed them.
That's right. Yeah, I've got very early ones from 1937.
That has box and papers and everything.
It's got the papers there, the box.
Does that say 15?
That's got 15. I'm not sure if that's shillings. I'm not quite sure.
Insane.
Not bit before my time. Might look old, but yeah. And then I've got a 1950s, which I believe you've got a version of, which is exactly the same, I believe,
It is, yeah.
just with a different strap.
And I think the point you make is, well, you said local. So for those of you who don't know, we're from Leicester. My dad still lives in Leicester.
Yeah.
And by local, you literally mean about 15 minutes from where you live is where this company was located originally.
Yep.
And it moved location once or twice, I believe, in their time, but around Leicester still.
Yes, yeah, he remained in Leicester. He started out sharing premises with a company called Aviation, which was a brand that was around. I've seen them on eBay. That are very similar in design to this one. Services became much more successful, so he moved into bigger premises, hired a lot more people.
Right.
The design of these speaks very much of the time.
Of course. And I think that's what's interesting about this. So how many services do you have?
46 now.
So nearly 50 services.
Yeah.
And that's again ranging from 1920s all the way to the 1970s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's really interesting. It goes to show you're a collector. Yes, and we'll talk about the watch on your wrist in a minute, you've definitely attained something that's maybe a bit more than just a collecting piece. It is something that you've retained value in from the year and a half or 2 years it's been that you've owned it. But this isn't value based, is it? Let's be honest. This is pure passion and history and collecting, and I think sharing as well. So we were discussing earlier. I personally think you should contact a museum in Leicester to say, you know, I have this collection and this history that I've gained. Would you be interested in displaying it? And I think people would be interested in seeing it. You know, I think it's quite a depth that you've gone into. I mean, would you guys and girls like to see a video dedicated just to the services? We talk about the history, we show the different variants, and we see what else we can find. Maybe even show you the locations. That could be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be really pleased to offer that to yourselves if that's what you'd like to see.
Let us know down in the comments. But I think from the services we should go all the way over to the situation you found yourself in where you had accumulated 40 plus watches total.
Yeah.
You had this big collection. I think it was when I visited one day and you got all
Yes.
your watches out, and I said,
Yeah.
you do realise here you have what you could get is your dream watch if
Yes.
you got rid of most of this.
Yeah.
And I think it was a big sort of and ahhing because you loved your watches. You'd accumulated these over
as
years.
a collector, you collect because of collecting. It's I wouldn't say it's an illness, but it's
Certainly up there.
it's it was the thrill of the hunt and also the appreciation of what I collected, the rotation of the watches and that kind of thing. That was great. But obviously, I had my grail as a lot of people call it, which was the watch that we're going to discuss. And
I think that's enough teasing. So, as you probably guess, it's an Omega Speedmaster. So, why the Omega Speedmaster?
Well, being born in '68, I was around. Obviously, I was too young to see the actual moon landing, but I remember watching TV when I was a bit older, the other moon landings, which ended in '75, and was drawn to the history of Omega, the Speedmaster specifically being the first watch on the moon. Mm-hmm. It just ticked a lot of boxes for me, and it was something that I'd always strived but never dreamt I'd ever get to that position of actually owning it. It was something that was always something that I would strive to do at some stage in my life.
And I think we were discussing early days about maybe like at the time, 10 years down the road, you might go and get finance and finance one new at retail or something like that. That was the plan. I was working at retail at the time. We discussed that. Maybe I can try and get you one. And I think how it all came about was quite interesting because we sat there, we went through your watches, and I think I just got my notepad out. And for those of you who are just tuning in, you don't know who we are. Kibble Watches, we buy and sell watches. That's what I do. So it was perfect place at the perfect time really to do something like this. So we go through your watches and I just start writing down numbers that I think we could achieve for each one. And I think we ended up working out you could have the Speedmaster and some cash extra
That's right.
on all your watches. So then I think over the next week you sat down, you went through the watches, you chose which ones you wanted to part with, and I went, collected them, and we began the process, and I think it took a total of about a month.
I think it was less than that actually.
Less than a month, was it?
I would say within 3 weeks we'd completely sold everything.
Wow.
Which
we're bloody good, that's what it is.
I mean, it was incredible. And like you say, we got far more than I ever dreamt that we'd get, especially with the Monster.
Because you bought that a long time ago, I believe, under £100.
It was £85.
£85. So we're talking a first-gen orange Monster. And I remember the debate many years ago about buying a bracelet. Because I was like, buy the bracelet. Whilst it's cheap, just buy the bracelet. It will add value. And you were like, no. And then I think eventually you just you caved and got the bracelet.
I got one in the end.
And it certainly helped. But, and there was interesting little vintage Seiko 5s that you probably bought for like £20, is fair to say. And we sold it for 100 and something pounds in the end. So again, I think it goes to show being a collector like that can lead to somewhere. Not always, but some pieces you can do very well on. I'm sure some pieces you didn't do so well on. You probably broke even or even lost a bit of money on some of them. Probably the ones I bought for myself. But.
I think overall, I think we made far more than I ever dreamt we would do. Far better than I think it was because at the time when I was buying, the prices were very different.
Especially on this range. So again, something to keep in mind for the collectors watching, we're not talking Rolexes, we're not talking these kind of things where the prices have always been quite high. We're talking stuff that's under £100 for the most part. And I think it's interesting how that market has changed and no one really talks about it because it's not as thrilling or as exciting as talking about £10,000 watches, right? But it definitely did change. And then what was it like getting your dream watch? Like most of us, dream watches change or they're so outlandish that, like for me, it's a 15202 Royal Oak. I mean, what are they now? £80,000? Who even knows? I don't even pay attention because it's out of this world. And even if I had the money, I probably wouldn't buy it. So having a dream watch that's attainable, but also very realistic because it's a great watch. What was it like getting it?
It was incredible. I sat there and couldn't stop looking at it. It's very rare that it comes off my wrist. The funny story is I actually got because this was a November 2013, I believe.
Predates the box.
And it was 2014 when they introduced the box.
Yes.
But
so this is where it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
So this is where I think is the story of Amiga and the moon landing, and also the big box they did with all the NATO straps and everything. Personally, from my perspective, I look at that like that's ridiculous. No one wants that. The story, yes, they went to the moon, but it's very overused. So I'm on the side of like great marketing, but for me, I'd rather just a watch and not bother about the box. Whereas you're the complete opposite. You're what they've done so well to actually capture, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that. So the whole story is what drew you in, but also the idea of having that big box was what it was all about. So we got you one without the big box because I just assumed the same thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you went and spent how much on just the box?
It was £300.
Which is probably pretty good for now, but I mean, £300 on a box is kind of amazing.
It is. I wanted the full experience.
Yes.
I've kept the original box and papers and everything, so that it will be sold with both if it ever gets sold, which I doubt it ever will. I think this is something that I will keep
100%.
and pass on to yourself. It's something that I treasure, and I hope that it will carry on.
Well, Isla already likes it, so there you go.
Well, that's right.
You want to be careful near stairs with her, you know what I mean? This is it. But no, I think it's a great watch, and it was great to have been involved in that experience for you as well. You know, we sell many watches, we sell many of the dream watches for certain people that are just everyday watches for others. So it's nice when it's something that we get many of that ends up being a dream for someone, and it being so close to home as well, I think is lovely. And your collecting didn't stop there though, did it? You still carried on even after this.
That's right. It's again, it's the thrill of the hunt.
Yes, and I think it's fair to say the watches we're going to look at after all came after. For the most part, they came after that.
Yeah.
So let's move on to, in my opinion, the second most interesting watch you own, and that is this Tissot Chrono. What can you tell us about this, and how did you get it?
You actually found this watch. We were standing in the car park. You showed me the watch, and I instantly was drawn to it. Yeah. It was the style, the dial, the flash of colour, the Bakelite bezel. It just ticks so many boxes. And finding out that it's actually got the, I believe it's the Landron
Lamania base.
Lamania.
Yeah, so the same Lamania base movement that the chronograph and the Speedy used, the 861.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
And again, it does shout 1970s.
Yeah. I absolutely love this watch. I remember in Birmingham I bought many watches that day. There was a couple of dealers there who had incredible stuff and were very fairly priced, and this was actually the sort of highlight of the purchases. Yeah. So, but when I saw your face and I saw how much you loved it, I had to let you have it at the cost price, and it's good because you actually wear it, enjoy it,
Absolutely.
And that price was ridiculous. You're looking at least double on that now,
I know.
You know what I mean?
I know.
It's amazing that you've got this and able to enjoy it. And every now and again, I can totally steal it and wear it from time to time. But
That's
beautiful
right.
watch, and I think probably between these two, they're the ones you wear the most. I think
they are. Yes.
Chronographs are clearly your.
Yeah, I mean, my Eco Drove has definitely taken a back seat now. It's had a retirement as watches do.
Sits on the windowsill, keeping charged.
It does. It keeps, like I say, the charge is incredible for that kind of watch. They were doing such interesting things back then, and I think again the brand itself has started to look back at what they've done in the past and is now bringing this heritage line forward, and I think they're doing it justice.
If I'm not mistaken, they've re-released this watch pretty much. It was slightly different, but in the PRX Chrono, it's a very similar period, and similar design.
Yeah, it's very similar design.
It's interesting to see that coming back. But I'd say that's probably one of my favourite watches you own. Yeah. Obviously, the Speedy's a classic, but for me, that's definitely my favourite. And what should we jump to next? Should we? Tell me about this. What's this?
So this is an M watch, which is a watch by a brand Mondaine, which you're more familiar with, the railway watch, what they're famous for. Yes. But the M watch line came about as a value brand. This was a military, which I've always wanted a Hamilton.
The original Hamilton.
The original Hamilton. And this one just shouted at me when I saw it. Yeah. With an ETA movement.
Yeah.
It was basically what the Hamilton was. I just love it.
Much more affordable as well. I
Absolutely,
suspect.
yeah.
What I find
fraction of the cost.
What I find interesting, I've just read this now. I've not read this before. 100% post-consumer recycled brass case.
Yes.
There you go. So that's a fully recycled brass case.
And at the time when this was made, which was, I would assume in the 80s.
80s, 90s,
I would assume something around that. It's got everything that you want in a military watch.
Yeah, proper field watch.
Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. So let's move on to the Nevada. We just shot this bit with a camera glitch, so let's pretend like we didn't. But this Nevada Compensmatic, for those of you who know myself and Kibble watches, you know we love Nevada. We've always had them. We've bought and sold many. So what's the story with this one?
So I love the design. It reminds me of the early Seamasters at a fraction of the cost.
Yes.
Again, with the applied indices and the case shape, that flair of design that was around in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nevada is a brand that is quite underrated.
100%.
We've had one or two in my collection, which... the Antarctic, which was a full box and papers,
yeah, that I bought off
which
you.
is awesome.
Yeah.
And I've always been drawn to a Seamaster design, and this again ticked a lot of boxes for me.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's really gorgeous, and I think if I remember correctly, I serviced and did the work on this. So you bought it at a very good price because I think it needed some mechanical work, case work, all that sort of stuff. And this is back when I was wanting to play around with being a watchmaker. Don't worry, guys, I don't touch any mechanically. I don't touch any of the watches we sell at Kibble Watches. They're all touched by a professional watchmaker. But you agreed to let me potentially butcher your watch.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was an opportunity for me to get the watch some kind of servicing.
And casework pretty much for free.
Casework for free. So I thought, well, yeah, let's give you the opportunity to try it. And the watch is still ticking today. You know, you did a great job. Gives you the experience which you wanted.
And it's made me realise I never want to do that again.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I enjoy buying and selling. I do not want to be playing around with the movements inside. What a pain, that's for sure. But no, really cool watch, really cool watch. Let's move on to the final vintage watch of today. This Seiko is bloody cool. I know you've had this for a little while now, haven't you?
Yeah. Yes, I have. Yeah. Again, it was the integrated bracelet, the design of the case. As it flows over your wrist.
Yeah, the way I sort of describe these watches is it's almost like a bracelet that happens to have a watch on it.
Yeah.
You know, because it flows like that across the wrist. Yeah, it's a really, really good looking watch. Again, Seiko, a brand that I think you've always had at least one in your collection, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah.
Multiple, usually.
Yes. It's, again, a brand that has always been, you know, sort of high on my list because they are so reliable.
Yes.
Especially the early ones. You know, it's amazing the quality of the movements that they put in, and also the bracelets. Some of the bracelets were quite good. You know,
not so much today, but
No.
yes, maybe back then for the period they were good. Nowadays, I mean,
yes,
I'll probably
Yeah.
I would probably say that's a bit behind, but
Yeah.
what a great looking watch, that's for sure. And talking about reliability, that's the final watch on the table.
Yeah.
So we've started in 2002 with an Eco Drive, and we've gone pretty much full circle with one of your most recent watches,
Yes.
I believe,
Yeah.
with a Paddy Solar. So we started with powered by the sun, finished off powered by the sun. Funny how that's gone.
Yeah.
So what's the story with this one?
So I've always liked the tuner. I had a turtle paddy, and
Which was one that was sold towards that. Yeah.
That's right. And I've always wanted another paddy, and I saw the solar version, and I was drawn again to the design, and the rubber strap is so comfortable. It's very long strap, but but yes, the design again appealed to me with the Pepsi bezel.
Yep.
Again, it ticks a lot of boxes.
And again, I think it's interesting. You've gone almost extremes of design across the board with the periods, right? Because this is considered an extreme design, the tuner. You know, you've got this plastic or resin or metal shroud around a watch. It's a bit out there, isn't it? It's you love it or hate it kind of thing.
I think because I'd sold my Monster, which again had that
big aggressive design.
that aggressive design. Yeah, it's, I've always liked dive watches. You know, the again the practical and robust
For all your diving needs.
Yes, that's right. You know, yeah.
In case you fall in the canal when doing photography.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, going after me tripod when it falls in.
That's it. That's exactly it. But no, it's incredible to see how it's sort of come full circle towards the end, and your collection, how it's developed over the years. It would have been interesting to have done this prior to the Speedmaster, because I think it would have been great to see just how many there were.
Yeah.
I'm sure Danny would have absolutely loved videoing all of those. This alone was quite a task as well. But what's next? Is there anything in the horizon? Is there anything you're thinking?
I never say never. I mean, there's always. I always love the thrill of the hunt. If something comes across that appeals to me, I will go for it.
So Richard Mill next it is then.
Yeah.
Yes. But is there a specific model or brand or something you want to explore next?
I think again sticking with 1970s. I think like yourself, that period. There's so many interesting designs.
Without question.
Brand-wise, I'm not too sure. It's always difficult to say. It's something that when you see it, you know it's the right thing. Right. And that's what. And
you're that kind of collector. Like we will hopefully have more collectors on this series as time goes on. And you'll see some collectors, they know what they want. They've got basically a tick box and they go through. Whereas yourself, you sort of get drawn once you see the watch, and then once you know what that watch is, apart from the Speedy, you knew that for a long time. Yeah. But you sort of you're waiting for whatever that inspiration is to come up next. Yeah. And luckily, you know a guy who might sell a few watches every now and again. So
that's right.
There's the access is there, that's for sure.
The opportunities are always there, and writing the histories and that kind of thing. Yes. It gives me inspiration of brands to maybe look into. You know, from the very obscure that we do. Yes,
100%. I think that's the interesting thing. Well, thank you very much for coming on Collector's Corner. This is a series we're going to hopefully do more of as time goes on. If you want to be featured, send us an email, get in contact. But it's been a lot of fun. It's been good to actually sit down, see your watches all together. There's still obviously a couple more we've not showed, like G-Shocks and other bits.
Yeah, but, of course.
Hopefully we'll get to do it again, and hopefully we'll see you again on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure. All right. Anytime.
Thank you very much. We'll see you again.
Thank you.